the insomnia really became its own issue in 2018, the fall of 2018, 2019. I'd moved across the country. I liked my new life. I liked where I was living, but I could not sleep. For me, insomnia and anxiety they're two sides of the same coin. And so being able to let go, relearn, retrain about sleep and insomnia has also meant for me relearning and retraining about anxiety. To anybody who's listening, hang in there because it does not last forever. It really does not last forever.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Gina with us. Welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Super nice having you. And for those of you who don't know, which is everyone out there, Gina, you're actually my client in BedTyme in our app. And it was really nice working with you. And I asked you to be a guest. So I'm grateful that you're here. But with that said, tell us in your words, how did you start having trouble sleeping?
I was always a problem-free sleeper my whole life. I could nap anywhere. I could sleep in the car. I could sleep on planes. I never thought about sleep until I was going through a divorce. And the emotional tension of that situation just really impacted my sleep. And it also coincided for me with the onset of menopause. So for me, it was hard to tease apart, like, is this anxiety due to menopause or is this anxiety due to not sleeping? It was kind of all rolled up in one big sleepless ball.
Yeah. And when more or less was this?
This was probably about 9 or 10 years ago.
Oh, it was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And since then I've gone through phases of sleeping fine and then not sleeping and sleeping fine and not sleeping. So it's been kind of an ongoing struggle. And I never really knew what was, if there was something triggering it or if it was something I did, because it just seemed to come out of thin air.
I hear. And if we go back to that initial period, you were going through divorce, menopause, which naturally can create some trouble sleeping for anyone. But did that turn into like a really kind of intense struggle with insomnia or not?
Actually, well, it was a pretty bad struggle with insomnia at the time because I was only sleeping. I mean, I thought I was only sleeping a couple of hours a night, and I had a lot of other kind of, psychological symptoms, like I wasn't eating well and, had a lot of brain fog and fatigue. And again, I couldn't really tease apart what it was. But at that time, going through a pretty bad divorce and having a child in the mix, losing sleep was a concern, but it wasn't my biggest concern. It was just kind of part of the package of difficult things that I was experiencing. The insomnia, so that would have been like 2014, let's say, and the insomnia really became its own issue in 2018, the fall of 2018, 2019. I'd moved across the country. I liked my new life. I liked where I was living, but I could not sleep. That's the period, 2018, 2019. That's the period that I refer to as when I was dying of insomnia.
Yeah, wow.
Because that's what.
No. Thanks for sharing this. And was it sort of brought on the initial like sleep disruption that so often leads into insomnia? Was it brought on by the move, or what do you think it started? Or you don't know?
I don't know. When I first moved to Arizona, my son and I were staying with my mom, and that affected my sleep, but I figured I wouldn't sleep as well until I was in my own place. And then once I was in my own place, I slept fine for several months. I don't know what if there was a precipitating event or what it was. And believe me, I looked.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. And I was just starting to get kind of over a hump. And then I had an unexpected death in the family that just kind of put me right back to square one.
I hear. And just a quick little sort of pause here for our audience there, so they know that, you know, what you and I know so well, Gina, is that anyone who goes through sort of a stressful time can have sleep disruption. We don't sleep so well, but insomnia starts to happen when our brains start to think that the lack of sleep is like a threat, a danger, like there's no other problem actually. The problem, it becomes a self-sustaining ongoing struggle, and that's what started to happen there in 2018 for you, right?
Absolutely. And that during that time, I was also extremely anxious. You know, I had anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I knew what they were. It's even if you know what's going on, it still feels like you're gonna die. You know, it feels like you're gonna have a heart attack. It's just it's a terrible, terrible feeling. And so I was anxious all day and then not sleeping all night. But I remember telling people, you know, the weird thing is I'm not anxious about anything. Like my life is fine. My kid's doing well. I'm in good health. I'm, you know, close to my family. I've got great friends. I love my work. And so I mean, I must have said that, you know, 1,000 times during that period. I'm not anxious about anything. I would tell people I'm anxious, I'm not sleeping, and they would say, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I would say, "I'm anxious and I'm not sleeping." There was no, you know, unlike years earlier during my divorce, there was no external discomfort or difficulty that I could see that was causing my sleeplessness or my anxiety.
Yeah. No, no, very well said. And at this point, did you start what so many people do, you know, experiment with things to try to make yourself sleep?
Yeah, I always laugh when, you know, if I mention not sleeping and someone says, you know, "Oh, have you tried lavender?" And I'm like, please, I've got, you know, I have a PhD in not sleeping. So it's just, it's, you know, yes, I tried everything. Now in 2014, when I wasn't sleeping and I just saw my primary care physician, and he put me on something called trazodone, which I hated. I hated it from day one. It made me dry. It glued my eyes shut. It affected my appetite, which was already suffering. So I was on that for about 6 weeks and hated it and stopped taking it, and didn't really improve my sleep. It made me pass out, is
Yeah.
what it did. It didn't really help me sleep. So I knew I didn't want to go that route again. I knew, you know, for me personally, sleeping pills and, you know, tranquilizers and anti-anxiety meds, I don't respond well to those. And so I tried, you know, room sprays and melatonin, and I saw a naturopath and, you know, got a vitamin schedule worked out. I think that benefited me, but I don't think it affected my sleep. You know, like
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that I did things to take care of myself. I tried various exercise things. I tried a regimen of going outside at dusk. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And of course, anybody you mention it to has a suggestion. You know, "Oh, have you tried medical marijuana? Oh, have you tried, you know, just like a shot of Jack Daniels right at bedtime? That does
Yes,
it for me."
totally here. And at this point, how are you functioning during the day? Is it impacting your day a lot or not so much?
It was absolutely impacting my day, and impacting my relationships. You know, I felt crazy, and my kind of internal narrative is that my brain was broken. And I'm self-employed, and that's fortunate because it gave me some flexibility. I can't imagine if I had to, you know, show up at a hotel front desk at 8 a.m. I don't know how I would have functioned. So it was pretty much all I could do to like get my kid up and off to school. Um, I could teach my classes, I could meet with my clients, but I knew I was not my best. And I felt foggy, but I think the worst effect on my daily life was just this intense anxiety
Yeah.
all the time.
Wow. Wow. Uh, Again, thanks for sharing this part. And so we can tell that this year was really difficult, really intense, but somehow it sounds like at 2019, somehow things got easier, or
Yeah, it resolved itself. I think part of what helped in my case, I mean, who the heck knows
Yeah.
what helped? I can tell you what, I can't tell you what helped. I can tell you what coincided, you know. So what coincided is, you know, in like March of 2019, I had a conference out of town. I traveled, I was staying with friends. I was really freaked out about what sleeping at my friend's house was going to be like. Am I going to be up? I'm going to keep them up. You know, I was really worried about it. And it was okay. I didn't sleep great, but nobody else was bothered. And I was able to like go do my conference, give a great talk, engage with people, and having that really meaningful stuff, um, you know, coincided with me kind of not noticing the sleeping as much. I just had other things that I was thinking about. I even took banjo lessons to try to give my brain something else to think about. I tried hypnosis, but when I started to notice an improvement was when I was, I can't believe I'm going to use this phrase because I gave my first sleep coach heck for using this phrase. I was out living my values. I was out doing the things that are meaningful to me in the world. And that's what coincided with loosening up about my sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And just you know, you've already said it so nicely, but just again for our audience to kind of double down on this helpful messages is that when, you know, for 1 year, you know, imagine our brain has been thinking that not sleeping is this big threat, danger, something it really has to deal with. And, you know, taking banjo lessons as an attempt to like distract it, it doesn't really work when we do that with that intent. But then when you're like, I'm going to go to this conference, taking that, you know, the leap of some courage, sleeping in other places, now you're kind of truly shifting attention, not with the intent of shifting attention to sleep better, but you just sort of like living your life, doing what feels meaningful to you. And our brain goes like, oh, maybe there's other things that we can focus on. We don't have to completely be immersed in this inner struggle. Things happen a little easier. But at that point, I'm guessing it wasn't clear to you what was going on. You just started finding things getting easier.
I just kind of stopped thinking about sleeping. It wasn't deliberate. It was um just the net result of being engaged with and thinking about other things.
Yeah.
Um, and if, you know, one of the things that really showed me is that travel and meeting up with old friends is something that I really value a lot. It's something that's really important to me. And so, yeah, I couldn't, you know, there's no way I couldn't ever pinpoint like, oh, it was on, you know, March 31st that I started sleeping better. I have no idea. All I know is, you know, at the beginning of 2019, I was dying of insomnia. And by the middle of 2019, I was fine.
I see. Will you find as in it was pretty much not in the kind of like not on the radar, or it was kind of in the background a little bit, not.
No, I really don't remember thinking. I traveled a lot in 2019, and I don't remember thinking about or fearing the sleep thing at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
It was just kind of lifted, you know, just gone. And even as we moved into, you know, the year of COVID, right, which I know was miserable in so many ways for so many people, but I slept great.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. And it wasn't until earlier this year, 2023, that my sleep started going awry again. Um, I don't even want to say it that way. I don't think my sleep was any different. It wasn't until something this year made me start worrying about sleep again. Um, and it was bad this past summer. I went to see a friend in Myrtle Beach and I slept like a rock, and I'd sleep until like 10 o'clock in the morning. I just slept great. And of course, and I would say to her, "Ah, I'm sleeping, this is so lovely. I'm sleeping like a baby." And everybody would say, "Oh, it's because you're on vacation. You know, oh, it's the salt air.
Right.
You know, oh, it's all the wine. Oh, it's, you know, if I tried those same things at home, I wouldn't have, I don't know that there would have been any
No.
positive outcome."
And so now it takes us to kind of like where you eventually find like our little ecosystem, etc. But did it again start in this kind of mysterious way this time, or?
Again, I couldn't pinpoint. There's no way I could pinpoint when it started. Um, I was just kind of chugging along, and it got really bad in August. My son was home from school, and like many young people, he keeps hours that are really hard on a middle-aged insomniac. And so it kind of came to a head in August of this year. I don't remember what started it or triggered it. All I know is that in early July in Myrtle Beach, I had an awareness that I had not been sleeping well at home.
Ah, yeah, right.
Like, I don't even remember thinking about it at home. It wasn't until I was sleeping well that I was like, oh, you know. And then once I was conscious, and this is the brain game, right? Once I was conscious of problem sleeping, it became this like self-perpetuating anxious obsession. Oh no, when I go home, I'm not going to sleep again. And it's self-fulfilling.
Exactly. Yeah, totally here. So at this point, does it get to the level of like, you're I'm dying with insomnia again, or not quite?
Well, it didn't go on as long, that 2018, 2019 was probably about 6 months of feeling pretty bad. Um, this was shorter, but almost more intense, almost like a progressive disease, right? You get it in remission that comes back with a vengeance. And so it was a shorter, more compact time frame, but it was intense. And so that fear of, oh my God, is this going to be another six? Like, I can't afford 6 months of this. It's that kind of mental spin out that's all projection about, all the things I won't be able to handle if this happens. And then, by August, which is when I found you guys, it was intense. It was intense. I had the broken brain narrative again. I had damn it, I thought I was done with this. I had this kind of it's almost like I call it the mean girl voice in my head. So when I learned from you the concept of deploying kindness, that's really helped to quiet that. But it's this kind of blame, or like, dang it, Gina, here you are again. How'd you end up here again? As though it were something I was doing on purpose, And so um, that whole kind of ball of fear and anxiety, not even so much about like, oh no, I slept crappy last night. But for me, it's very anticipatory. So it's like, what's it going to be like tonight? And then I start to fear going to bed. And then I do that spin out of like, how long is this going to go on? Am I ever going to sleep again? Is this just going to be the rest of my life? And so again, started trying things.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally here. And now, and we know that's a tricky thing. We try things, it doesn't work, we get more scared, we try new things, etc. But somehow in during this time, you came across what did you come across first actually? Was it the app, the YouTube channel, or do you know?
It was the YouTube channel. So I was, at this point where I felt like I could barely function. And I was sitting at my dining room table doing jigsaw puzzles, which I never do jigsaw puzzles unless I can't sleep. Can't sleep, can't read, can't feel like I can't think, and so I have to do something. And all my laundry's folded. So I'm, sitting at my dining room table all day, pretty much doing jigsaw puzzles and kind of weeping on and off and feeling terribly sorry for myself, and listening to or watching things on YouTube, listening to music, podcasts, just kind of this stream of noise all day. And so, the internet, YouTube, knew that I was insomniac because I've been Googling stuff. And so it starts feeding me things. And so sometimes the algorithms really work. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they really do. And so in my professional field, I'm a debunker of things people say, like, I before E except after C. And I'm like, actually, that's not really true. So I write about and teach about things that debunk commonly held but false beliefs about language. And so the internet feeds me some of your videos from the series of debunking sleep myths, debunking insomnia myths. And I watched, one or two kind of half watching, half listening. And I couldn't tell you what it was that caught my ear. But that started a process for me that was so critical, where my rational brain could get in the way, of this kind of mental spin out and the anxiety. And I couldn't tell you now what myth was debunked, what specific thing I learned first. I could tell you lots of things that I learned. But I realized, like, it really appealed to the debunker in me. It really appealed to the researcher and the epistemologist. How do you know that, though? There's all these things that we think we know that we really don't. We're just taking it on someone else's word or something we watched sometime. And so that started, like, that day started a process for me of realizing that I had a lot to learn about sleep and insomnia.
Yeah.
I already knew that conventional wisdom had failed me. Back in 2019, I had gone to my, allopathic nurse practitioner and said, help, I can't sleep. And I really don't want sleeping pills. I really want to get to the root. Like, is there something physical going on? She had 2 nursing students in the room with me, and she left the room for a minute. And while she was out of the room, these 2 happened to be male nursing students sat there and discussed me as though I didn't exist. And they talked about putting me on Seroquel, which is a tranquilizer and really serious drug. And so I already had a sense that, like, conventional wisdom and traditional approaches weren't it for me for insomnia. So I was either going to be sleepless for the rest of my life, or I was going to approach it differently and learn things for myself.
Yeah. Wow. I can, you picture, you described it so well. I can picture you kind of like sitting there doing the jigsaw puzzle, the YouTube stream, and then hearing something that, oh, this is catching my attention, and leads to down a new path. And did you spend some time kind of like learning from the YouTube channel, or did you quite quickly after that sign up for the app?
No, I didn't know about the app from the YouTube channel. I actually kind of binged that series on debunking.
Oh, the Heard Online. Yeah, the debunking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Heard Online. And realized that I had some false information in my brain, for sure. Some of the really common stuff that you address, but that kind of unlocked the capacity for me to notice my own myths. Don't know where I got them. I had some really weird ones.
Do you remember some of them?
Yeah, I do. This one that I remember is I remember being up, at the usual 3, 4 a.m. And my son's bedroom is across the hall from mine. He's away at college. But I remember thinking, oh, his blinds are open, so the light's going to come in the morning and it's going to wake me up. And in that moment, I realized that I had heard, read something somewhere, couldn't say when, this idea, and it sounds so ridiculous. And I just want to say, like, I do actually have a PhD. And so I feel really silly saying this silly thing, but I did believe it. That from the time you're born, you have basically like a pre-programmed certain number of wake-ups. And every time you see a light in the middle of the night, or you wake up in the middle of the night, you kind of waste one of those wake-ups, right? And so like the notion is you're inching ever closer to death, right? That's really this. I mean, it sounds so silly for me to say it right now, but in the throes of it, it's this very scary, like, I'm gonna die from this. I'm gonna ruin my brain. Like my brain is my asset. I'm gonna ruin the thing that I need, that I use to make a living. And, I'm going to ruin this. That's the really scary narrative. But going through your, heard online and debunking some of these things. Oh, most of us aren't really sleeping like 8 solid hours. Oh, my sleep probably isn't that much worse now than it is when I feel okay. It's my obsession with it that is problematic here. So that really unlocked something. And I didn't find the app until I was actually ready to pay somebody like $1,600 for a month of private coaching, which, I'm fortunate that I could even consider that, because I think a lot of people can't even consider that. But even, it's a stretch for me. I got a kid in college, like I've said, and, I'm a single parent. It's a stretch. It's a lot of money, but I had to do something. And then, I think it was somewhere on Facebook, and I was kind of checking this person out, and somebody in the comments on her page mentioned the BedTyme app. And I went, what's that? And I went and signed up.
Yeah. How interesting.
Wow.
And now, so you sign up. Now, as you start, exploring the app and texting back and forth with us coaches there, initially, you were frustrated because you felt you weren't really getting it, right?
Yeah, I was so irritable. It's just in such an irritable frame of mind and so impatient with everything. And I wanted something right now. And so this, this notion that I had to kind of let it come to me. I'm a quick study, right? Like I've always been top of the class. And so with a lot of my learning, I can accelerate the process. I can study harder. I can read more, especially when I'm really motivated or engaged with something. This isn't like that. There is no top of the class here. And there is no cramming. You can't accelerate this process. That was difficult for me because I had a sense from the YouTube channel that I really had a lot to learn. The reason that the app appealed to me, I know I could have learned everything on the app that I learned on the app on the YouTube channel. I know that. But it was a time thing for me. I had spent like 3 days, binging, and I can't really do that all the time. And I like the text-based approach in the app. I like to be able to read things. I like to be able to go back and reread them, because I get a kind of a different mindset. So yeah, initially I was really frustrated, and I put my poor first coach through the paces. Like gave him a hard time. He told me to live my values, and I think I said, what the hell does that even mean? It sounded like psychobabble to me, and I couldn't wrap my brain around it. And I think it was, a few weeks later when I had been handed off to you, and I had again like this epiphany, this moment of, oh, that's what that means. So if I haven't slept well and I'm super anxious and super irritable, I can cancel my clients and sit at my dining room table and do jigsaw puzzles and eat junk food and weep. Or if I haven't slept well, I can get up in the morning, go for a 20-minute walk, notice things in my backyard, right? Eat it, make myself a nice breakfast, meet with my clients, get a kick out of them. That's living my values. it's a concept I couldn't even understand at the beginning of it.
Yeah. Wow, which segues so nicely with what you said about we can't hurry the process. It was like when you first hear it, it's like psychobabble doesn't mean anything. But after some, like it kind of sinks in, it simmers around our brain, and then it connects with, aha, this is what it means. Then it leads somewhere.
Yeah, it really, it has, I can hear things, but and part of it's an intellectual process, but it's really very much an emotional process, which is again, as like an intellectual person, it's something that I'm resistant to. Like, what do you mean I got to feel things, and so that I remember that, living your values was one thing that took me a minute, but then once I got it, it was like, oh, even if I haven't slept well, I still have a choice about, how I spend my day. Um, and even if I don't have much of a choice about how I spend my day, I have a choice about the mindset that I take to the day. So, that was, it seems very basic, but it's not head learning. Like it's not a concept that you study for a test and then you spit it back out. It's just like, it's this heart learning, right? It's this other space. It's kind of like it's almost very somatic, right? It's when you're learning a new workout or something physical, or you're taking ballroom dance lessons and you're learning something new, and you go through all these motions, but it's not in going through the motions. It's just being present, and then it clicks at some point because you've been there practicing. The other thing that really, when I first heard it, I was like, what is deploy kindness? Because like many anxious types, I have the mean girl voice in my head, that either tells me at the end of the day I haven't done enough, or, whatever. I mean, it's like an eighth grade snotty girl, and in my case. And the thing that made deploy kindness kind of come alive for me, because I definitely have that voice of, it's 3 a.m. and it's like, dang it, Gina, you're up again. Here we go again. And I don't know if you said it or I saw it somewhere, but this notion, and again, it's so simple, but this notion came into my head of like, I have great friends. I mean, great lifelong. I'm still close to my best friend from kindergarten, 50 years. And what came home to me is like, if your friend were struggling with sleep, would you say that to her? If your friend were talking to you at 3 a.m. and said, oh, I can't sleep again, would you say, dang it, Lorraine?
What's wrong with you?
A moron. Yeah. What's wrong with you? And of course, I would never talk to a loved one in that way, And so learning to be less harried in the process, learning to let go of that, like, come on, okay, just tell me what the secret is. Had like a chilling out effect on my entire personality, not just the sleep. But I mean, I can see the benefits of changing my thinking, changing my mindset. It's across my life.
Oh yeah, I want to ask you a bit more about that in a second, but staying, for now a little bit on this process, you had these insights, or kind of like sinking in, like this emotional learning, almost like the somatic learning has started to happen. And we talked about it in the context of self-kindness and of living our values. And if I remember, you were not actually on the app that long, which in my mind translates to you started seeing things change, fairly early.
Absolutely. I started just before Labor Day. Because I like my trial period kind of ran into the Labor Day weekend, I think. So end of August, beginning of September is when I started. And by mid-September, I was making plans with people that I would never have been able to make prior to working with the app. It was almost like in my case, it was almost like a little floodgate, like I feel like I was kind of resistant and irritable and impatient for about 2 weeks. I was only on it for a month. So, you know, it like I said, I couldn't pinpoint it, but it's almost like there was kind of a let go or a floodgate opening or just but it wasn't because of anything I did, except what I did is show up. It showed up. I did the work in the app. I read, I communicated, I thought about stuff, I wrote, like I did that. And that works well for me. Reading and writing, that's my bag, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't there for a long time. I was prepared. I would have happily spent more time and money in the app if I had seen a need to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I'm super glad this happened, of course. And I want to ask you, because I'm sure listeners will be curious about this, sleep wise, you saw things getting easier, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I started to be able to sleep in again, meaning like I could sleep till 7 instead of being awake at 3, and that. Whether I stayed in bed or not. Um, I started to be able to just stay in bed. That was a permission that I think the sleep coach school gave me, was I didn't have to do this, could this is another one of these things that you've heard online, right? If you haven't fallen asleep in 15 minutes, get up and go do something. So like my house was spotless, because I I can't get up and read in the night when I'm not sleeping. I can't, like, my brain's not for it. So I would do physical stuff, clean and put stuff away and reorganize closets and so I think that was kind of the first step for me, was permission to just stay in bed, and also permission to stay in bed and do whatever the heck I wanted. Not like, oh, you can't look at your phone, or you can't turn on a light, or because what soothes me is playing games on my phone or watching California history series on YouTube, or like looking at my phone is often what I'll do when I can't sleep. And so just having the permission to do that was a big deal, and not having the voice in my head being like, you're making it worse. You're just making you're more sleepless nights ahead for you because you're looking at your phone. No, so that, like, once that kind of scolding was removed, I think that's when I just was able to naturally feel better about sleeping.
Absolutely. So nice to hear this. And I really think just two more questions for you, which is one is the this one, if you could, travel back in time to maybe let's say 2018, 2019 there when things were really difficult and tell you something, what would you tell yourself?
Wow. The first thing that comes to mind is this won't last forever. Which I think is still a really important message. Like, if I do have a couple of nights where I don't feel my sleep was the experience I wanted, that ability to know, like, you're not going to die from this. This isn't, terminal or even chronic. It's just a couple of nights. So I think that's probably the first thing I would tell myself, because I didn't know. That was my big fear at the time, was like, is this the rest of my life? Like, I'm not even 50, is this what my life is going to be like? Um, I think the other thing I would say is like, oh, hey, get this app.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm sure those would have been helpful. But you found your way, eventually, which is wonderful. And now also, you touched upon this already, but this is a really nice question. And it is this journey through this sleep struggle. How have you found it beneficial in other areas of life?
It definitely has. for me, insomnia and anxiety they're two sides of the same coin. And so being able to let go, relearn, retrain about sleep and insomnia has also meant for me relearning and retraining about anxiety. And so it's not that I never feel anxious. I certainly do. It's physiological. There are moments when I just have to, say to the person I'm with, like, you know what, let me catch my breath for a minute and then we'll come back to this, because I can kind of feel that mounting. That's a good example, actually, of me deploying kindness, of me and my anxious responses to whatever, the same way that I would for a friend. If I had a sense that a friend was anxious in a situation, I would probably say, just take a minute and like catch your breath and, go outside. And so, but also I find that, the most concrete example I can give you is, when people first want to become Facebook friends with me, I will say, that's fine, but I just want to warn you that, like, I bitch a lot. Like, I complain. Can I say that? Like, I complain about stuff. I've been on hold with customer service for an hour and they still haven't solved my problem. It's kind of like I process everything in writing, right? And so it's not everything I do. I'm funny and and I post great food pictures. But what I notice now, this really concrete thing, is that, like, I'll go and I'll write this little rant and then I'm done with it and I don't post it. So it's a really small shift, but it's this deliberate choice of caring for my mindset the same way that I care for myself physically or brush my teeth. And it's something that other people have noticed and commented on. When I saw my son over his fall break and I hadn't seen him for 2 months, and he was like, what is different about you? And I could pinpoint it. And so there are a lot of, deliberate choices that come along with that. Deciding to go for a walk instead of deciding to watch another episode of something.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just watch another episode of something too.
Yeah, exactly. It's again self-kindness, giving yourself freedom, do whatever you want.
Right, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. This was super nice to hear, Gina. You've shared so many things that I think plenty of people in the audience will resonate with and will be helpful to them. So I just want to say thanks so much for being here and sharing.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And like, to anybody who's listening, hang in there, because it does not last forever. It really does not last forever. So
Perfect words to end on. So we'll end there and be in touch,
thanks so much.